All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming to the Recruitment and NCAA little workshop here. In the chat, I've posted again the PowerPoint that I'm going to be using tonight. And the reason I've started off by throwing that in there now is there's going to be a ton of links that I've put into this PowerPoint for you guys to follow. When it comes to NCAA and recruiting, there's just so much information that if I were to spend as much time as I want to on it, it would take about 2 days. And I know we don't all want to be here for 2 days. So I have put that in the chat and I'm going to share my screen now. We'll get started. All right. Okay. Are we all good there? Ms. Juarez, is that all up?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, everyone. So where I'd like to start is just to tell you a little bit about myself, where I'm coming from. When we're talking about recruitment in NCAA, sometimes you want to make sure that the information you're getting it from is from someone that hopefully knows what they're talking about, right? Well, I've been at Chaminade for just about 11 years now. I actually did attend Chaminade. I played basketball at Chaminade, and I was fortunate enough to go through this whole recruitment process and get a full ride athletic scholarship to Santa Clara University, which is a Division I school. So I had a lot of success with that. Had opportunities to go play pro, but body said no, and after 9 surgeries, decided to call it quits. I've also been a coach at Chaminade for a number of years as an assistant coach on the boys varsity basketball team. On and off, I've done it for a total of 10 years now, so I get what it's like to be on the other end now, sitting on the bench, working with the players, and kind of helping them through this whole process. But I mean, I love everything about sports, and I'm excited to get the opportunity to kind of walk you guys through some of this. So the first thing I want to do is start off with just some NCAA facts, and you guys can kind of read this. And what I think is really important for everyone to kind of remember is, going on to the next level is a big deal, and it's not easy, right? So only about 7% of high school athletes go on to play varsity sports in college. And that means Division I, Division II, Division III, or NAIA. Okay, so it's a very low percentage. And then of all the high school athletes across the country, only 2% actually go on to play Division I sports. So the reason I like to throw that out there is, I always encourage parents to be realistic, right? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be shooting for that D1 scholarship or that D1 school, but to be realistic with where your kids' potential is. Students and athletes, you need to be aware of where your kind of potential is and keep all your options open. Don't ever close the door on a school because you think, oh, that's Division II. I use myself as an example for this. When I was getting recruited by schools, I had heard about Santa Clara University, and honestly, I thought there's a Santa Clara street in Oxnard, and I thought that's where it was. I was definitely mistaken, and when I went to go visit and talk with the coaches, realized like, hey, this is the place I want to be. So always keep your options open. Don't shut any doors. So there's 3 divisions when it comes to NCAA: 1, 2, and 3. Of those 3, though, only Division I and Division II offer the athletic scholarships. And I'll talk about Division III and what they do and what that all means. So one thing I always like to say too is when it comes to sports, I always like to throw this little fact out there that actually the hardest sport to get a D1 scholarship for is girls tennis, where it's only 1 in 181 athletes will play for a D1. Then the next one is actually boys basketball, where it's like 1 in 116 high school athletes will actually play D1 basketball. So just some little random facts for you guys. Recruiting at Chaminade. So, I'm always asked, like, what should we do? Who should we talk to? The best people to start off with would be your high school coach or a club coach or someone of that nature. The coaches are often the people who will be contacted first by the colleges. And, a lot of times these coaches have been a head coach for a long amount of time. Our varsity football coach, Coach Croson, has been around forever. He knows a lot of people. Mr. Cantwell knows a lot of people when it comes to basketball, and they develop these relationships, and that helps in that they're able to reach out to these coaches and advocate for your kids and for you athletes. and say, you know what, hey, I got a kid that I think you might like, you should come out and take a look. And they're one of the best sources to make those contacts and to get some of this information. But at the same time, don't ever hesitate to reach out to the counselors, okay? We're constantly talking with the coaches. I just texted with Coach Wilkerson for about a couple baseball players the other day to try to get his take to see, you know, are they Division I level? You know, because it helps me when I'm working with your students on developing backup plans and whatnot. When it comes to recruiting, you know, unless you're top tier athlete, a lot of times you're going to need to be creating some highlight films. You know, you want to make sure that you're creating, you know, if you're playing volleyball, you hitting or you playing defense, you know, whatever it is, you want to make sure you have that highlight film so that you can send that out to coaches, you know, get your name out there. And once you have that highlight film, you know, talking with your coach about who maybe you should be contacting or whatnot. I was talking with a couple athletes actually earlier today about this, and sometimes the best route would be, you know, let's figure out some schools that you're really interested in if volleyball wasn't involved. And then once we figure that out, then we know that these are the schools that you want to send those highlight films to. Okay, so that's another option, another route that some students like to go. You know, as much as it's tempting for parents to step in and try to help, you got to remember that this is a process for your students. Okay, don't get sucked into reaching out and contacting these coaches and whatnot. It needs to be the athletes that are actively doing this. You know, if a coach responds and you think you're trying to help out and respond back, and you know, they're going to be able to tell if it's a parent or an athlete that they're talking to. So support your kids, walk them through it, but you need to make sure that it's the actual student that is reaching out to these coaches. And, you know, above all, we can't stress this enough. You know, grades are crucial with this recruiting process. You know, no matter what level you're at, you're always going to be able to get more looks from colleges if you're a good student. You know, if you are earning A's, you're taking those AP classes, or you're taking those honors classes if you can, that is going to make you more appealing to these coaches. And if you're a good student, they might be more willing to take a risk on you, you know, so maybe you're not one of their top recruits, but if they know that they don't have to worry about you academically, they might be a little bit more inclined to be like, all right, well, let's give them a shot, because, you know, we're not going to have to spend any extra funds on tutoring or anything like that. Let's see what they got, and we're going to recruit them. When it comes to individual sports, as you guys probably know, there's a lot of different deadlines, you know, whether can they talk to them here, what kind of communication can they have, can they email, can they have face-to-face conversations? All of that is unfortunately different for each sport. So it's impossible for me to know all those different deadlines. Sometimes it's even hard for the coach of that sport to know the exact deadlines. So at the bottom of this picture here, you'll see where it says D1 and D2 recruiting calendars. That will take you to a link at NCAA where it has all the individual sports. You can click on that and you can see for cross country, hey, so when can college coaches start asking or talking to them, you know, what types of communication, but it helps you kind of be educated on what the process might look like and help your student athlete through that process. So again, there's a lot of information, but please use these links and you'll be okay. Okay, so the next part I want to talk about is Eligibility Center. We work with our students all the time and encourage them to sign up for this Eligibility Center. What the Eligibility Center is a division of the NCAA that, you know, has to approve whether or not a student athlete can play for Division I or Division II. Division III, there's no Eligibility Center. It's only for Division I and Division II. And so their big focuses are, you know, whether or not they're academically prepared, the sports, like what sport are they participating in, have they followed the rules. They want to make sure they've taken certain high school courses. And they're also there to help you guys navigate this process. So sometimes this can be confusing, or you're not sure what to do here. They're very accessible. And I've had student or families reach out to them and they hear back right away. If not, someone's picking up the phone, they're ready to help. So they dedicate a lot of personnel to helping student athletes navigate this process. So never hesitate to reach out to them and ask questions if you have them. So if you have a student that wants to compete at Division I, Division II, they must do this eligibility center. They have to make sure that they're meeting the academic initial eligibility requirements and then amateurism requirements. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because you hear amateurism, you're not quite sure what that means. Bottom line, when it comes to amateurism, is they want to make sure that you're not taking money, that you're not, playing sports for payment or anything like that. They want to make sure that you're not working with an agent. And so you can see here some of the actual things that they're looking for to make sure that your student is considered an amateur. And again, at the bottom here, it says, reach out to them if something's going on that you're not quite sure about. Like, hey, they're doing an individual workout and they talked with this professional player. Is that considered a violation? Probably not, but if you want to call them and inquire, you're definitely more than welcome to do that. All right, so that's what kind of amateurism is. Don't take money, don't get an agent, okay? And so what I want to do here is talk about what that academic requirement is. Now, one of the benefits to going to Chaminade is that we have structured our school to make sure that they're UC eligible, and at the same time, make sure that they have all the requirements when it comes to athletics and qualifying to play D1. Right, so we mandate that all of our students take 4 years of English, okay? We mandate that they take 3 years of math and all of this. So you can see these are all the bare minimums that we require of our students already. So there's nothing special that they need to do. The best thing that they can do is pass these courses. Where some of our students might run into trouble is if they failed 2 semesters of math. Well, now they're a year behind. What are we going to do about that? We want to make sure that they're remediating those classes and everything. Because the nice thing about the NCAA is when they're factoring in GPAs and everything is they replace grades. So if a student took geometry, and geometry is tough for a lot of our students, but if they took the first semester and ended with a D or an F, if they remediate it over the summer and get an A, when it comes to refactoring their NCAA GPA, they're going to use that A that they got in summer school, as long as it's at a NCAA approved high school like us or something like that. All right. How they perform in these classes will dictate what kind of eligibility they have for Division I. So you can see here, there's different types of qualifiers: early academic qualifier, a regular qualifier, academic red shirt, non-qualifier. Okay, and we're going to kind of go through that in a second here. What I also want to point out is there's another link at the bottom here, and this is a worksheet that is available to everyone to use if you want to try to figure out, hey, what is my son or daughter's NCAA GPA? How do I figure that out? This is a worksheet that takes them through that. As counselors at Chaminade, we have a lot of experience doing that with you. So if at any point you guys have questions, reach out and ask. I've actually gone through and created our own worksheet that we use to help us kind of figure it out and make sure there's enough quality points. We allow to factor in any remediation classes we need to, anything like that. So, please never hesitate to reach out to us if this is confusing, okay? What I want to point out right now is they've made a lot of changes with COVID. This has impacted everyone. Athletes, it's really impacted. Not only has it affected the way that they're becoming eligible, but it's also affecting how they're being recruited. And that is something we're going to talk about too in a second here. Typically what happens is eligibility is based on a sliding scale of their GPA and their test scores, okay? And this QR code right here is a great place for you to go to get updates about what is going on with NCAA and your student athlete. I doubt you're going to find too much about your particular year right now. We didn't even find out that the class of 2020 wasn't going to require SAT or ACT until August. So it may be a little bit before they know for sure what's going to happen, okay? And here, this is an example of that sliding scale that I was talking about. Now, this is the traditional sliding scale. This is not what they're using right now, Okay, so again, this is not what they're using right now. This is traditionally what it looks like. I would anticipate that in another year or so that they're probably going to go back to this. So just keep that in mind. If you're a current sophomore, there's a good chance that they're going to go back to this. Okay, but you can see here, basically the higher your GPA score, the lower your SAT or ACT needs to be, and vice versa. If you're below a 2.3, you know, you're going to fall into that academic red shirt. But you can see when you have a 2.3, you got to score pretty well on those exams in order to qualify. Okay, so that's just an example of that sliding scale. Okay, and so this is what I want to talk about as far as the different qualifiers. So the early academic qualifier was designed just to streamline the process for those students that NCAA knows they don't have to worry about. And so you can see what the criteria is here. You know, the biggest thing is making sure that they have that 3.0 or above. Okay, again, when they're going to Chaminade, these core courses, those aren't going to be an issue unless they're failing classes. They're going to have those 14 core courses. So a lot of our students are able to be those early academic qualifiers because of how well they're doing in the classroom. This is the normal qualifier. When you see 7th semester, that just means that, you know, you have your 2 semesters for freshman year, you have your 2 semesters for sophomore year, and then your 2 semesters for junior year, okay? So before starting that 7th semester, you have to make sure you've taken a certain amount of courses. And again, I want to emphasize, by going to Chaminade, taking the courses you're supposed to, you're going to have those classes. What NCAA has done for this current class is they've said, hey, as long as you have a 2.3 or better, congratulations, you're qualifying. We're not going to even look at test scores, don't even bother submitting them. We don't want them. Again, we're hoping that maybe for our current juniors, when you guys are going through this process, this is still the case. Again, we can't say for sure. Sophomores, I don't know. You know, so we're going to have to kind of wait and see what's going to happen with that. When you're a full qualifier, you're able to get athletic aid, you're able to practice, you're able to compete. Those are the most important things. Okay. When you're a Division I academic red shirt, that means that your GPA is falling below that 2.0 mark. Okay. That doesn't mean that you can't get that athletic scholarship. Okay, you can still get that athletic scholarship and you can still do that first term practice when you're there. You're just not able to compete. Okay, so that can be you know, a hard thing for a lot of students. And we want to make sure that they're given every opportunity to compete as soon as they get there, if that's deemed what the team wants them to do. All right, so that's the academic red shirt. Non-qualifier, you're not meeting any of these, you can't do anything. If a student is a non-qualifier, that's a conversation you know, we want to make sure we're having and seeing, hey, is Division I the route you want to go? Okay, because if maybe you have some other options where you can play, you know, you want to be talking with the coaches there, but a lot of times if a student's going to be a non-qualifier, coaches are going to back off from recruiting them a little bit more. Okay, so Division II, I want to talk about this because there are a lot of differences. All right, so for your Division II, there's 1 year less of English, okay, 1 year less of math. The sciences are the same, social sciences are the same, but you know, it's just the requirements are not as high. All right, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. Sometimes we have some of our students that struggle a little bit more in the classroom. Maybe they're feeling that Division II is the best route. It's not going to be as much pressure for them. Okay, again, there's more info on their core courses. There's a link there at the bottom when you guys are looking at the PowerPoint. But I wanted to just make sure I'm pointing out the differences between the requirements from Division II and Division I. And when it comes to being an early academic qualifier, if you remember, Division I was a 3.0 or better. For Division II, it's only a 2.5 or better. Okay, same number of core courses that you have to have, but the GPA is a little bit lower. But the qualifier, again, the GPA is a little bit lower. Instead of a 2.3, it's down to a 2.2. All right, but again, that's what you have to meet in order to be the full qualifier. Partial qualifier, so you can still get athletic aid, you can still practice, you just can't play. You just have to have a 2.0 or better in order to be that partial qualifier. Obviously, we want them all to be regular full qualifiers. Okay. Non-qualifier, again, they're not meeting that recommendation, so unfortunately they can't play. So what I want to bring up here is Division III. This is oftentimes a very underutilized opportunity for some of our athletes. A lot of times these Division III schools are the higher academic, and we've had a lot of players, both football, we've had a lot of baseball players that have really used this to their advantage, and that, you know, maybe they're not that D1 caliber player, or they know that they're not going to play as much there. But if they go to a Division III, they're going to go to a better academic school, and they're going to be able to play. You know, so the big differences with that Division III is that they don't offer any athletic scholarships. Okay, so a lot of times that's going to, the money that you might get would be based off of merit aid or financial aid right off the bat, okay? And you can talk with the coaches and say, hey, this is our situation. What is it looking like? And sometimes coaches can kind of advocate for you and hopefully maybe get you a little bit more money. Okay, the nice thing about Division III is you don't have to go through the eligibility center or anything like that. It's all going to be based off that individual school, which sometimes can make it a little bit more challenging, but for some schools, maybe it's even easier. Okay, although you're not creating that one page in order to be certified, they still have a profile page, which lets you organize everything. You can send it out to coaches. And I'm going to talk about the differences between the profile page versus the eligibility certificate page. Okay, so that's Division III. Again, I really would encourage a lot of athletes to look into this. With our students in particular, they're great academics, their outstanding athletic ability make them ideal for a lot of Division III schools. All right, so this is what I was talking about, registering for the NCAA. What do you need to do? So for the certification, students must be certified by the NCAA Eligibility Center to compete at Division I or Division II, okay? There is a one-time registration fee of $90. And if you create that profile sophomore year, then, and you pay that $90, you don't have to ever pay that again. It's not like year to year or anything, it's a one-time fee, all right? In order for a student to take their official college visits or sign that national letter of intent, this has to be completed, okay? They have to go on there and create the profile, pay the fee, and then I'll talk about what Chaminade has to do, because there's something we have to do once they create their account, all right? The profile page is another great opportunity for students, all right? And you can do that from freshman year, sophomore year, whatever it is. It's really designed for students interested in Division III. But with that being said, if you are creating this and you're initially interested in Division III, and then maybe suddenly you grow and now you're 4 inches taller and you have Division I schools really interested in you, you can transfer this over to the certification account, okay? There's no registration fee for this though. And like I said, you can transition that over. And then you got the create account. So again, if you click that link, it's going to take you directly to where you need to go, all right? Okay, so I have questions about registration. So these are a lot of the common questions we get. You know, when should I begin this process? And honestly, we would suggest that you're registering for these accounts sophomore year. By doing it sophomore year, you're just kind of getting it out of the way, and you are able to kind of focus on playing. And one last thing that you have to worry about. So sophomore year is the ideal time to do that. What type of account should I create? Depends on how you're feeling, right? So again, if you're not sure, go with the free profile. And then if things are going well, you can transfer it over. Do you have to create an account prior to doing official visits? Yes, okay. Is there a deadline to register? No, there's no deadline, but you have to do this in advance of a lot of opportunities in the future. And so again, just get it done out of the way, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. All right, so let's say you've created your account, you paid your fee. What do we do? So once you complete the registration, then what I would suggest you do is you reach out to the counselor and you let us know. Once you let us know, we will meet with, we'll make sure that that transcript has been sent in. All right, that's the part of that you don't have control over. Okay, we send in the transcript, and that's how they're looking at your grades. They're looking at making sure you've completed the core courses, all of that fun stuff. Now, we can only send our transcript. So if any of you are transfer students or any of you are parents of transfers, you have to keep in mind that you have to contact the previous school and have them send that transcript. We cannot send that transcript for you. So if they went somewhere else, that transcript has to get sent by that school. Okay. The other question I get is, how do I qualify for a fee waiver? $90 might be a lot for you, especially with COVID. I get it. In order to qualify for that, you have to meet the criteria to get an SAT or ACT fee waiver. And you can find those online. It's, how many people live in your house, what's the total income, and that's how they kind of base that decision on whether or not you get that fee waiver. All right. So those are a lot of the common questions. This page is just a plethora of resources for you. All right, so there's a bunch. And anytime you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But again, thank you so much for coming to this. I know I'm flying through this stuff. I just want to make sure that I give you guys time to get to the next one if you can. But I do want to take some time to answer some questions if you guys have them. So I'm looking at the chat here. Oh, let's see, and I'll repost it too in 1 second here. Register my daughter with NCAA because they participate in AAU. So you want to make sure to go in and make sure that that's the actual certification account. If you went in there and you paid your $90 fee and whatnot, I believe it's going to be the same one. I don't think you're going to have to do a different one, but you want to double check that. Okay. Can you complete both the profile or certification? I would really do either or. If you do the profile, then you can transfer it over. If you do the certification, there's no real reason to have the profile. The certification profile is actually a lot more in depth than just the free profile. Okay, so I would probably choose one or the other. And I will, real quick here, I'll throw in the PowerPoint again. Oh, and I think I just sent that to one person. Sorry. Okay, so that should be going up now. Can you take the SAT, but not have to reveal it if you are not satisfied with the score? So that is going to depend on where the NCAA stands with requiring the SAT when they're there. So like for our current students right now, even if they took the SAT, the NCAA Eligibility Center will not take it. They're only looking at your GPA. So if they're still saying they don't want those test scores, they're not going to take them. I don't know if at any point they're going to go test optional or whatnot, but right this second, no. In the future, I'm not sure yet. Okay, so let's see. Do the coaches that are not part of Chaminade staff have the same contacts as coaches employed by Chaminade? Well, that's going to be really dependent upon the coach. We do have some coaches that do not work at Chaminade that have been coaches for a long time. And that's not to say that they're not going to have the same opportunities. Being a high school coach and you've had some successful players, you've had a number of schools reach out to you, and it's just a matter of over time, have you developed those relationships? We've had some coaches that played in college or played professionally, and that's how they gained those contacts. So no, just because they're not affiliated with teaching at Chaminade doesn't mean that they're not going to have amazing contacts for you. Do you have to complete the NCAA eligibility page for Ivy League schools? So yes, they're still considered Division I, even though their process is a little bit different. You still have to be cleared. Now, if you're getting recruited by Ivy Leagues and they're really interested, you're probably qualifying, but that's still, they're part of Division I, they're part of NCAA, you still have to do that eligibility. Okay. Do you recommend using services to help your student get recruited? So that's a tough question. I know that there's a lot of programs out there, and sometimes they can be pretty expensive. And so honestly, a lot of times you have to weigh the pros and the cons. You know, is this something that's going to be worthwhile? It also kind of depends on the sport too. Sometimes, you know, cross country or field hockey, it might be harder to get your name out there just because it's not maybe as popular of a sport out here or something like that. And so sometimes I have seen those types of athletes getting those recruiting services. I'm not going to recommend that you do or don't. I would first suggest that you're using the resources that are available to you through either club teams, either it's a private coach or your Chaminade coaches. And if you feel like you're not getting anywhere and you're lost, I mean, I get it, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to do something like that. Okay. So during a time when we can't play, how can a player get noticed? Whew. That's tough. And I feel for our athletes, and I think we all do. It's really hard when you're talking with students and you know that they probably have a chance of getting recognized if they were able to play. And it's frustrating. And so, you know, I've heard of showcases for various sports in Arizona or Utah. And I have some players that go out and do those. And I have some players that, you know, they've decided that it's not worth the risk. You know, and so they're not going to do those things. And that's got to be a family decision, whether or not to go and do those and travel out of state and, you know, risk it. It's really hard. And this might be a time when you're trying to reach out to those schools that you're interested in and maybe you can play at so that you can get your name on a list so that when you are able to play, coaches be like, okay, well, I know they reached out to us. I want to make sure that I'm seeing them. So maybe use this time to reach out to some of those schools that you're really interested in. But again, it is a hard time for recruitment. There's no doubt about that. All right. Any other questions? You know, I want to just emphasize to you, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to the counselors. We talk with coaches too. I've had coaches call me asking about players and how they are in school, you know, so never hesitate to reach out. And, you know, and if we don't know the answer, we have no problem going and finding out that answer for you or talking to your coaches and getting those answers, whatever it is, just let us know. The resource, oh, that was a private one. So again, at the last page on that PowerPoint has a number of different resources that are available to you. And then throughout that presentation, there's different links. If you go anything that's, I think it's orange with a line underneath it is an active link that you can click on to get any of those resources that I was talking about. All right. So I know it's 7:33 and I think the next presentation starts at 7:30. So if you guys need to leave, you can definitely take off and go hit that up. I'm going to stick around for a little bit if any of you guys have any further questions. Okay. But thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Borchart.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
No problem.